Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames, and I'm here to talk about the whole series for Escaflowne. Now, if you noticed, I did start doing episode by episode, and then I kind of fell behind. There were some done that haven't ever been released or put up anywhere. And eventually I just got to the point where I'm like, do you guys really want me to do an episode by episode? So I asked around, and there's a little bit half and half, but the general consensus was like, just finish it and then give your overall thoughts. So this is going to be kind of like a series overview. You kind of saw where I was going with for like the first, third or so of the series. Those are all up on the Patreon. You can see that for yourselves. But as for this, I'm just going to go over a broad series review right here. Now, you might notice this doesn't look like an anime series, and, well, that's a very good reason for that. And that is because I have gotten in trouble before by using footage, animated footage from series, no matter how cropped or rotated or mirrored or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm not getting in trouble for using footage of an animated production. So guess what? You just have to deal with the fact that it's game footage. Now, this is a Escaflowne RPG game for the PlayStation 1. There's not a lot of footage of it out there, so credits to anyone who's ever uploaded any of this footage before, because there just isn't a lot of it to go off of. So yeah, just bear with me. Bear with me. This is not going to be able to use footage from the show itself. Again, and before I say anything else, I just want to thank once again to Miles Uncharted, who is the producer of this review. As for the series itself, like, hey, let's try to get this spoiler free out of the way. What is it? Should I watch it? Escaflowne is a fantasy anime, although it kind of has a sort of, I guess you could call it modern day Narnia vibe to it, because it involves modern day real world character getting put into a completely different world universe that is more fantasy oriented in its setting and design. And is it good? Actually, yeah, it's pretty good. I would say this, that it's not like a lot of typical modern day animes. It starts out very similar to probably what you're used to, where it's just sort of like high school drama with kids going through their puberty life crisis, what have you. But you'll notice though that the character designs are actually starkly different from what is the general moe blobs of today. So it's actually refreshing in a way. And as much as I generally don't really like high schoolers or any of their pointless problems, they actually handle them fairly well here, and that is good and bad. Like the when the characters make dumb decisions, they feel like they're making dumb decisions because they're just stupid teenagers or they're just young. It feels more authentic and real, rather than just sort of the kind of slice of life stuff that most anime does, where it just kind of like they're just sort of exemplifying and making comedy out of characters being dramatic, and that's really not the case here. It actually eschews, even though it is a fantasy setting, it actually eschews closer to what I feel more realistic demeanor would be from people. This kind of goes back to, I think, a little bit about where Miyazaki once talked about the problem with a lot of animators today in Japan, is that they're all otakus and they haven't spent enough time around real people. That's what his actual quote is. He never actually said anime was a mistake, and it's actually a fairly true statement, I believe, because a lot of it is just sort of these really exaggerated things. One thing I will say this about the series, again, is still in non-spoiler territory, is that you will not see a lot of, if any, shortcuts or cheapness or just super exaggerated poses, where you see this in like Pokemon, where like all of a sudden like they go into a crazy pose and they freeze, like their body freezes, and they have all these little symbols all over their face or whatever, and there's no popping into chibi form, there's no like hyper exaggerated like falling down, stuff like that, which is again it's really nice to not have that shit, because it feels cheap, and it honestly it is sort of like, okay, we hyper accentuate an emotion so hard, but we also go super radically cheap on the animation of it. The interesting thing about this show is that it was supposed to be 39 episodes, and then it got cut right before production to 26. So it actually has, and it's sort of a small issue, is that there is a lot of info sort of like crammed through you, but in a way it almost makes the series better because it doesn't ever waste your time on anything. This is a very tight fast show, and that it's all the better for it. Although there are parts where it is like, okay, yeah, you can definitely see the cuts and the fast forwards, and some of like the general like we wish we could have had more time here, but we can't kind of thing. So again, brevity's the soul of wit. It's a 26 episode series. It doesn't waste any time. I can't say there's no filler episodes, but there are an episode or two where it's kind of just an exposition dump, and that kind of sucks. But it's not a huge hindrance because again, it is really relevant exposition. It's stuff that's important and be moving the plot forward. It's just there are moments where it's like, fuck, we obviously didn't have time to stretch this out or make this flow naturally. So stop. Let me explain shit to you. It's okay. It's not terrible in those moments, but it is a little bit noticeable. But again, I would trade it all again to have a series that just keeps it going, keeps the wheels in motion. So again, as a guy named William Shakespeare once said, brevity is the soul of wit, which means don't waste my time, and there is no time wasted in this show. Now, should you watch it? Do you like fantasy? Do you? I would not say that you should probably jump into this if you're a super mech fan. You might like it for the robot fights because they are there, but it's clearly not like a major highlight of the show. One thing I heard was that this show was pitched sort of as a fantasy Macross, and that becomes pretty apparent very early on with how certain character dynamics go for like the main three. So yeah, if you know anything about Macross, yeah, you'll definitely see that here in a very broad sense. It's definitely something that's not super comical. If you like a lot of like comedy with your anime, it's not really gonna be here. Is it overly dramatic? A little bit at times, but it tries to play it a little more straight and a little more reserved in some sense. There is exceptions to this. The first and foremost being a character called Delando, and I'll try to avoid going into spoilers. He's very over the top. I won't say any more of that till I get into spoiler territory. But overall, it's kind of one of those classics from the 90s where it's a self-contained story. It moves along at a very fast pace. It doesn't waste your time with anything. It doesn't have a huge message to say other than it is a sort of a tale of growing up and sort of realizing things. As far as like getting into like the nitty gritty of it, like as far as I guess dense plot or plot twists or what go, it's kind of general. It's kind of JRPG silly. It gets that because it's a fantasy, and there's almost no way to avoid that, I guess. And that's getting probably too deep into spoiler territory there, but it's got a really good character designs by Nobuteru Yuki, who obviously has a much different look and style than what is traditional of anime today. It's honestly better than most of what I see in anime today. There are moments where the show looks really, really pretty and the backgrounds look really good. And then there are times where it's like, yeah, you can totally see where the budget got a little strained, a little cut here. For the most part, though, it's actually a beautiful show. It does something I really like, which is the vehicles and the mechs themselves are all hand drawn still, so there's none of this weird bullshit CG. It's a pet peeve of mine personally. I fucking hate CG vehicles in anything, and even shows I really like Avatar were guilty of this, and it always stood out. It always looked terrible. Like even if they were shaded well or animated well, they still fucking stood out because they didn't fucking belong on a 2D canvas. So it has a very consistent look. That's a good thing to say here, is that it's consistent. Again, there's no stupid cheapiness of it. There's no stupid, dropping to the floor, dumb moments. There's no CG vehicles. It's a very consistent show as far as that goes. You may not like it if you're into shows that are. It's oddly too to say this, but if you really like sort of fan servicey stuff, you're not gonna get a whole lot here. Not even with like the main character running around in a high school outfit. Like it's really tame as far as stuff like that goes. Though there's definitely moments of stuff I'll get into that's, oh yeah, it's fan servicey, but not from like the main cast. And you may not like it. Again, if you're into slice of life, you're definitely not going to like it at all. If you're into sci-fi, you're probably not going to like it either because it's it's sci-fi light, and it's kind of like this very straddled line between light sci-fi and fantasy, high fantasy. Like it kind of tries to be both, and it pulls it off mostly well. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for Lotus War, you're not going to get Lotus War. If you're looking, for something akin to Trigun or Bebop or anything like that, or if you're looking for something like Macross or Gundam, definitely not going to get that here. This is fantasy setting. Try to think of this as Narnia for Japanese high schoolers in the 90s. It's probably the best way you're going to look at it. So with that being said, do I recommend it? I do actually recommend this. It's definitely one of the better animes out there. Probably one of the better self-contained series because again, it doesn't stay too long. It doesn't overdo its welcome. It wraps up completely. And I think the most egregious faults are all kind of within spoiler territory. So just know that really my only real complaints with this show are mostly related to the nitty gritties of the plot details, which it'll be interesting if you do decide to watch it, which I recommend you do because you could certainly do a lot worse than this. I'll see interesting if you agree with me or not. So let's get into spoiler territory. Spoiler talk. All right. So from this point forward, if you haven't muted it or turned it off or whatever, and you don't want to hear spoilers, that's your own damn fault now. So as I said before, fantasy setting kind of Narnia-ish. It's about a girl Hitomi who one day accidentally, while trying to impress a guy she's sort of got a crush on in high school, like a guy appears and then a dragon appears, like gets beamed down to Earth, and they get entangled in this sort of like fight chase sequence with this like fatty land dragon thing. And the guy is named Vaughn, this warrior from another world who comes down to beam a light. And then after he kills the dragon, him and Hitomi get accidentally sucked back onto Gaia. And there's this whole story about what Gaia is. And, when you see from the second or third episode, it's like, okay, Gaia's like this planet where you can see the Earth and the moon in the night sky, almost as if it was just a little bit past the moon in our solar system, which doesn't make sense, but it will be explained. Don't worry about that. I won't get into like crazy spoilers for that, but there you go. So it's sort of like the Tales of Hitomi on Gaia, and then how she gets back home, and then all the adventures she gets stuck on this other planet with Vaughn. Vaughn, being the warrior prince turned king. And then very quickly into the show, it becomes this thing where Vaughn's country gets attacked and destroyed. And then it's sort of like this on-the-run chase sequence to one, figure out what's going on with the people who attacked. Which the main kind of crux is more or less there's this empire that's going around and either making treaties or crushing other nations. So you kind of got that going on, and then you kind of find out some of the people on fighting have their reasons within the empire, like the main there's the main big bearded baddie, and who he is kind of like ridiculous. I felt kind of funny, ridiculous, almost in a sort of like, oh, that's so crazy and wacky, only anime could come up with such an absurd thought. So there's that. There's a very Metal Gear-esque thing with Vaughn and his brother, who this is it's a little bit spoilery, but it's early on in. He discovers that his brother is working with the Zybok Empire, and then there's this. Then one character I talked about before, who's a little almost too over the top, is this character called Delandau, and they have their reasons for why he doesn't get offed, but they're a little strenuous. And then even with the big plot twist with that character, you kind of see coming anyways. He was just kind of like a shitty, annoying character, but he was kind of supposed to be. So I guess that makes sense. And he kind of like, he bones the fuck out like somewhere between the third and halfway point of the series. So my sort of grievance is not really with the character, but just the fact that he's allowed to exist by the Empire. Just they haven't offed him. It's so weird to me. And then he just kind of bones the fuck out for a while. Now the other character, the characters are all kind of interesting and great. And one thing I like about the characters, which I can see being a turnoff for some people on this series, is that they all have their fucking hang-ups, every single one of them. But that's real. Like, everyone's got problems and everyone's got issues, and it's not all just kind of like mental quirks or someone who can't, like, it's not like Master Roshi where like I can't help looking up girls' skirts or something like that. Like, no, I mean, like they have kind of like fucked up issues a bit, and they're realistic. Like Hitomi's kind of, she's an optimistic girl, but she's almost to a fault. And then she's a fucking high school girl, so she's constantly surrounded by pretty dashing young men, and then she can't fucking figure out what she wants, which is so fucking true. So it sort of makes, you could say it makes a love triangle, but there's like at least three other characters, so there's like a love hexagon going on this series the whole time. So if you do hate that, I mean, it goes where you think it's gonna go by the end, but yeah, sort of the love angles might be too much for some people. Usually this shit kind of bores me, and it didn't bore me this time. And so you see, like I said, there's Hitomi, and then there's Vaughn, and then there's the third guy who the main love triangle, which is Alan Shazar. And Alan Shazar is this giant fucking man whore of a character. He looks like Prince Charming. He's this dashing knight. He's gallant. He's noble. He's super gentleman, and he would fuck anything that looked like a pretty female. He'd fuck a pig if it had the face of a pretty blonde on it, probably. and I say this because as you get into the series, you see that this guy, he whether he realizes it or not, he just fucking tries to woo everything, and he is, he's someone who he's been fucking around in the past too. He's also kind of fucking creepy. Although the one thing I kind of like, this is a total side note, one thing I like about Alan Shazar is his design, and his design reminds me so much of another character called Kai Kiske, and Vaughn is almost a younger, skinnier version of Soul Bad Guy. Like, there's even a moment where they throw down, and I'm just sitting there kind of waiting for the text to flash on screen. Heaven or hell, duel one, let's rock. I can't believe that these two didn't have some influence on the Guilty Gear franchise. It's impossible, I feel, especially with their designs. But Kai is Alan Shazar is a giant man whore, and I never really liked him, even though he is a good guy. He's got a good heart, but he can't stop sticking his dick where it doesn't belong. You could say he's a bit like an anime Prince Charming version of David Duchovny, maybe. I don't really know, but he gets his, I guess, not really comeuppance, but like, there's something really late in the game with Alan Shazar that reveals about him that is just fucking creepy as fuck. Personally, I think it flies over a lot of people's heads, but this guy wants to fuck his sister. So thankfully, he doesn't actually end up with anyone in the end. He, like I said, he not necessarily gets his deservance. That's a huge spoiler. I get it. I know. But again, you're in spoiler Terry. Your own goddamn fault. So. Is as far as that goes, like, the first half is a pretty good sort of like, just sort of chase sequence, I'd call it, and then the second half, the middle is like this big exposition dump, and then the last half is sort of them all deciding what they want to do with their lives, is what I'd call it. There's the prince of, or I'm sorry, the princess of the country that Alan is a knight for, and she wants to bang Alan, and Alan's done nothing but sort of lead her on, but she's supposed to marry this other sort of roguish character who looks a lot like Satan from Xenogears. I'm starting to see why Miles likes this series so much. And so again, there's a whole little separate love triangle there, and then she knows that he's actually not a bad guy. And the thing is that's crazy, as I found, was that, like, so Malerna, I believe, is her name. I usually just refer to her in my head as Princess Hobag. So the Hobag princess wants to be with the man whore who can't make up his mind who he really wants to be with. And then there's Satan Izuki from Xenogears, who actually really does love Princess Hobag, even though it's a forced marriage. And he has such a fucking great line where he basically just leaves her and says, like, when you figure it out, like, you come find me. Like, I'm not gonna, even though I'm married to you, I'm not gonna wait for your hoe ass, to figure it out. I thought his departure from the series was fucking excellent. And then Alan kind of has a thing for Hitomi, which he even proposes to her at one point. Then you find out he it's because she reminds him of his sister, which is just like, what the fuck, dude. And then as far as the villains go, again, Delando is just a little too over the top for me, but I'm glad he's not in most of the series. Vulcan, who's the liquid snake of it in every sense of the fucking word, he's okay. I think one of the biggest problems with this series comes from Vulcan's abrupt turn, because Vulcan has like basically these two little sex slave cat girls who at one point in the series there's a scene that just seems to hit a bullet point of fetishes. They're like, we need lesbians, we need cat girls, we need incest, and we're going to hit all three of those right away in one scene. But when they get offed, it's like Vulcan gets really pissed off and basically has this turnabout face against the Empire, who he's been devoutly serving the whole series. So the one thing that's good about it is that nobody on the good guy's side really trusts him, even like an episode or two after he's turned and is helping them and giving, telling them all he knows and stuff. And it's like nobody really trusts him. So I'm glad that the other characters aren't idiots about it, but you could kind of tell like his turn probably should have been a little like more than just one episode in, or one episode where he just goes from being calculating, super badass liquid snake style bad guy to just, you know what, fuck it, I'm a good guy now. Again, the Emperor is kind of like just anime silly. The whole, I guess, big angle of this series about gravity and destiny and what it is kind of anime ridiculous. Not in a bad way, not in the best way either. But it's okay. It's okay. It works. I think my biggest, honestly, like overall, I think my biggest issue with this series comes in the ending. And again, this is a spoiler warning on top of a spoiler warning. So if you like all you've heard but you haven't seen the ending yet, just stop. Just fucking stop. Okay. My biggest problem with Escaflowne is actually the very, very end. I feel they botched it, and I feel they betrayed even themselves. So 2 or 3 episodes before the end of the series, there's a moment where Hitomi just gets fed up with everyone, and like Dorothy in Kansas just clicks her heels and says, I want to go home, and she goes home. She goes back to fucking Earth, but she goes back to Earth like a day before she got sent to Gaia. So she also goes back in time a little bit, which again kind of goes back to my sort of Narnia-ish theory about how this whole Gaia Earth thing works. But anyways, she doesn't really take any advantage of the fact that she's been sent back a whole day before she left, but just sort of lets everything play out. And then she has this fucking realization when she's back on Earth and she's back with Himano or Domino or whatever the fuck the guy on Earth who she had a crush on, who her best friend also had a crush on, but don't fucking another separate love triangle, and god damn it, teenagers are dumb. She has this fucking realization that, you know what, you know who the real bro is, you know who the real guy is, the one who's actually saved my ass, the one who's not gonna like fuck anything that moves as long as it's got a pretty face on it. Fucking Vaughn. She finally gets it in her fucking head that fucking Vaughn is the person she should be with. And then, so when she comes back up to the point in time where she first met Vaughn, because again, she was sent back a day ahead, in the past, she willingly jumps back into his arms and she flies off and they go and do the last battle and solve the thing. Here's a problem I have with that. The very fucking resolution of the ending is just Hitomi going back to Earth, giving Vaughn her little pendant made out of dragon stone, or dragon heart stone, whatever it is, and just saying, like, we'll always be together in our minds. And I'm like, what the fuck is she thinking? I feel this ending betrayed the setup they had 2 episodes ago. There was no reason for Hitomi to go back to Earth as a character or even in the plot. Like, I felt that was kind of dumb. It sort of felt like they wanted to have this sort of like Narnia ending where like the kids have to leave Narnia and it's sort of bittersweet because they had all these great memories but time to go back home to the road. No, there was no setup there for that. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the 4 kids accidentally go back home, like not even willingly. And then the other times it's told them that, you got to go back. You can't be here too long. So it's more of a plot imperative in some of the later Narnia books. But here, Hitomi's just like, yes, I must go, Han, but don't worry, I'll always be together. Like, even though they confessed their love for each other like 2 episodes ago, I'm like, this makes no fucking sense, like, at all. She had also, like, even in the series, you see her basically say, you know what, I was so foolish. My best friend was in love with Amano, and I should have let them be together instead of me trying to get with them too, kind of thing. And so she's given that up and is gonna, you know what, her whole like hang up, whatever small, even though it was a dumb high school romance, that was resolved on Earth. And her deciding to go back at the end was dumb as fuck. Like I thought about it a lot after the ending. I'm like, I don't know why she goes back. I don't really know how it's relevant to the fucking plot at all. Like, even, and the thing is, oh, what about her parents? Like, her mom knows what's going on because her grandmother went to Gaia in the past as well. So it's like they're seeing, and then the fact that again, 2 episodes before, like, it shows that Hitomi's able to go back home anytime she wants, and Vaughn's even able to find a way to beam himself to Earth at will. This ending's dumb. They botched it right at the end. I don't get it. I don't think it. And I'm not saying, oh, it should have been a happy ending. I'm like, okay, if you want a bittersweet ending, or you want a sad ending, or even if you want a happy ending, you gotta fucking earn it. And I know that anime is traditionally awful when it comes to endings, and this is not awful. It's just weird. It's just nonsensical. It didn't earn a bittersweet ending. It didn't earn a sad ending. It was building up towards a logical conclusion that just happened to be a happy ending. And then they just said, no, we're going to fuck everything that the story's building towards. We're just going to go with our bittersweet, I have to say goodbye ending. My planet needs me. I don't get it. That was probably like my biggest hang up with the series altogether. The music by Yoko Kanno, who did Cowboy Bebop as well, is... Sometimes it's used really well. Sometimes there's not a lot of music at all. And then sometimes it's gorgeous. There are some episodes that have like tons of great music tracks. And there's some episodes that almost have no music tracks. And sometimes they repeat music. It's not inserted or edited into the series nearly as well as Cowboy Bebop. But the music that is here is very, very good. It's just not always appropriately placed like Cowboy Bebop, which is a little sad. But hey, man, I'll take a great soundtrack not always in the right spots or not used as much as it should have been versus a bad soundtrack. So that's whatever it is. The voice acting, I actually watched this all in English. It was the newer dub from the Kickstarter with Funimation. It was good. It was fine. Didn't have any real complaints of it. You could tell there were moments where they were kind of straining the script to match the lip sync. So yeah, it's kind of one of those tough calls where the lip syncing it makes it that you have to come up with really weird, contrived ways of saying things in English. That's okay. It's not that bad. The dub's actually pretty good, actually. I don't really have any real hang-ups with the dub at all. Like, I think Hitomi was really well done. Vaughn was really good. I think the main 3 are actually all excellent. I'm trying to think if there was anyone who wasn't dubbed well. Actually, I think they were all pretty much dubbed well. I think all the voices were good choices, actually. They all were really good. Even Delanda, who I didn't like, was perfectly cast in a way. Tomi was actually really well cast. I feel in the dub, like she's not super screechy or whiny. Even when she is having her moments of crying or sadness, it's like she actually sells it really well. Actually, like the most annoying voice is like this little fucking bastard child of Alan, because been sowing his seeds around the world, but it's a little tiny kid. What do you expect? Like, there wasn't really any way out of that one. Again, Alan's a fucking whore. And I'm glad he ended up alone, although he probably ended up just banging his sister in the end. Creepy ass fuck. So yeah, my biggest hang up with that was the ending. The dub was good. The music was fantastic. I recommend it. It's not the best anime I've ever seen. It's far from the worst. It's if I was gonna put it it's probably in the top 10 anime series I've seen. But then again, I don't know that I've seen 10 great anime series, honestly. Like, is it as good as Bebop? Not even close. But is it still good and still worth your time? Abso-fucking-lutely. I recommend it wholeheartedly. I just be aware that it's got kind of a stupid anime ending. My favorite character is Mole Man, who I'm sad they never gave him a proper name. It definitely felt like it could have been a tad bit longer. There was even something even within the video game footage that showed at one point Escaflowne, Delandau, and a floating fortress getting sent to Earth, and these fucking fighter jets flying in over Tokyo, being like, what the fuck's going on? Which, to me, is fucking awesome. I really wish there was some sort of small arc in this series that had that going on with it, but alas, we'll never know. But that's all I'm gonna say, I guess, on Escaflowne. I've gone on way too long as it is. So that is my review of the Escaflowne anime series. I give it a solid 8.5 because I know some of you are obsessed with numbers for whatever the fuck reason. So go out and watch it. It's a good one. Just try to be aware. The ending is kind of anime-ish and doesn't land as well as it could have, but be that as it may, you'll have a good time watching it anyway. So let me know what you guys think, and I will see you later.